It's nearly a month since we reached the end of the Jewel of Arabia expedition in Salalah. And whilst the walking and the driving stopped and the camels have gone home, the expedition dust really hasn't started to settle at all. It's what comes next that is the most important to me. The Jewel of Arabia legacy is really only just beginning, and I'm really excited to see how and hear how that evolves over the next year. But for now, in the next 2 podcasts, I'm going to share with you some of my personal highlights of the expedition. So let's go together right back to day 1 on a lonely beach on the shore of the Indian Ocean on the coast of Oman. So, I am sitting in some low sand dunes, sheltering from a gentle breeze. It's 5:45 in the morning, and my location is 22 degrees north, 57 degrees east, and I'm looking out over a beautiful orange glow starting to appear over the Indian Ocean as the waves break on a beautiful flat white beach. So it's January the 6th, 2025. It's day 1 of the Jewel of Arabia expedition, and my name's Mark Evans. I'm on the journey with a fantastic team of people who I'm going to introduce you to over the next few days as we journey through Oman in the footsteps of British explorer Bertram Thomas. And the beach I'm sitting on was the very beach where Thomas landed on December the 27th, 1927, which I think is 97 years ago. And he landed here because he wanted to do a journey down the southeast coast of Oman all the way to Salalah. And he wanted to use that journey to test himself for a much bigger goal, which he was to do 2 years later in crossing the greatest and the largest sand desert on earth, the Ras Al Haad. So for the next 30 days we're going to be following in Bertram Thomas's footsteps. Wow, I sound tired there, but there's nothing new about that. Getting to the start of any expedition is always a bit of an endurance race in itself, and I often start in a state of absolute exhaustion, and that hasn't changed over 40 years. But when you do get going, that's when you can really start to focus your mind on the journey itself and what lies ahead, rather than planning logistics and meeting with stakeholders. The first 3 days of Jewel of Arabia were a real indicator of what was to lie ahead. We experienced strong winds, thick vegetation that the camels refused to go through. We got the cars stuck in soft sand and had to navigate treacherous subka. And then on day 3, after being warmly welcomed by the Wali of Jalan Banibu Ali at the old fort that Thomas arrived at in 1927, we travel inland to the Outward Bound Oman Desert Centre to speak to someone called Mohammed Al-Zajali, the acting executive director of Outward Bound Oman, on what was a very special day for them.
We've been focusing on inclusivity and accessibility in the last year, and we actively been looking at different ways to include many diverse groups to our different segment of the society in our program. Last week we had deaf people, and also we worked with Umar ibn Khattab school, blind school last week, which is really demonstrate our commitment to inclusivity. I think today it's also another step forward, which is having this wheelchair, which is, I meant to say now, thank you to the Jewel of Arabia and also His Highness Sayyid Dhilyazan bin Haytham bin Tariq Al Said, who are generously funded this wheelchair, which has given us ability for a physically disabled person to participate in a journey with other people. So today we have 18 young people. It's day 4 of national next generation program, which is all focused about the current economic market in Oman and building some important skills that employer value to when they get job or when they applying for a job. When I met this guy or the disabled, he was really happy and appreciated about the opportunity that he had here, that he wished to be camped before, which is happened yesterday, and it was first time for him to camp with friends, and not only camp but also participate in the journey with them through the sand dune, which was an amazing.
Absolutely fantastic, and it's just great to see how you've grown step by step by step every year. And just tell me a little bit about the wheelchair. Where's it come from? Who makes it? And how far can it go? How far can it travel? Tell us a little bit. Describe it to the people listening.
Yeah, well, I think what it's coming from the UK as a company who are working on designing this. This is or I would say it's modified to the Oman environment. The wheelchair, it's a bit. The wheelchair's wheels are bigger, so it can travel in the soft sand. It goes to about 14-15 k's speed, and it's have a life battery of about 2.5 to 3 days, and it's great because you could use that battery not only just for the wheelchair, but also you could charge any other equipment. And if the disabled person have an other issue to use other equipment while sleeping, could also charge by the battery. So it's a great kit that we have, and we are really looking forward to really working more and more in this.
Not just a first for Oman, but the first all-terrain mobility wheelchair in the Middle East. Fantastic. The seas that lap Oman's shores teem with wildlife, and for weekend snorkelers and kayakers like me, you can see a lot of life, from turtles to dolphins to coral. But some lucky, special people spend a lot of time underwater. So when I met up with my friend and commercial diver, Omani-based Scott Jonathan Turner, it was a great opportunity to get him to take me into his underwater world.
I think one of the most amazing things, occasionally you get jellyfish blooms where, and I think I'm certain it is not in any way relating to damage to the environment, but I think it's a natural phenomena. And about every 4 or 5 years you get millions and millions of jellyfish. And of course we're involved with the power stations where the water gets taken in to cool them, and they all block up all the entrance to the pipelines. And diving in jellyfish, where all you can see is jellyfish, is a very strange experience. But other things we've seen since we've been here are, of course, whales are always a spectacle when you see them. And I think my favourite photograph I've got of them is a whale shark, which you occasionally come across just by chance, usually on our work sites.
Incredible. And I recall you once telling me about hammerhead sharks. Was that were they quite common, and where did you see those?
Well, they were actually in the Musson Dam, probably in the entrance to the Straits of Hormuz, so off the Oman coast. But it was actually near the border between the UAE and Oman, and we were diving in deeper water then, and actually that area is famous for the breeding of sharks, including hammerheads. Sadly, there are a lot less now than there used to be, but that was more than 20 years ago, and there were many of them, as I saw in the water.
Yeah, well, it's the same where I live in northeast Scotland. You know, the sea is not what it was, and you know, human activity sort of taking its toll on the environment a little bit. But what about human history? Because Oman has Oman has an incredible culture, not just sort of natural heritage, but also in terms of cultural heritage. And what kind of human historical things have you seen under the sea that are quite surprising?
Well, I mean, we have found in the past anchors, the stone anchors, it's difficult to date them because they were being used, of course, for thousands of years, but they were also used over 100 years ago, or 100 years or so ago. They were also common. I think our best find was in Muscat, in the Bay of Muscat, which of course is a very historic bay. And we found, initially the divers came up and reported the seabed was covered in amber. So we were, of course, very excited. Turned out it wasn't amber. It turned out it was frankincense of a very high quality that was still in the amphoras that it had obviously been transported in. So we excavated that area and came across also some cannons, which are now in the museum. So we recovered the cannons and gave them to an expert in Oman who basically restored them and put them on their carriages and gave them to the museums, I think in Hazm and also in Muscat.
And did the expert, was he able to tell you what the origin and the age of the cannons might have been?
He was amazing, actually. The guy, the easy one, he said that one of them was very large one. It was very corroded because the seawater obviously eats the metal. The military one, he said, well, that's very easy. It's a military one, so it's Portuguese, and it's from, I can't remember the exact date, but he could identify it immediately. But the most amazing thing was that we got two other matching ones, and they were identical. They were slightly smaller, actually. And he looked at them, and his name was Chris Rhodes, sorry, I should say that. He looked at them, and he basically said, oh, very difficult for me to date these because they are not military, so they don't have any sort of special marking on them. But I'll date them they're probably between 1840 and 1845, which for me, of course, was a pretty accurate dating in the first place.
Yes.
And it was simply, he could tell from the shape of the cannon and the type of moulding exactly where they'd come from. They'd actually come from Scandinavia and obviously been bought by privateers or private ships and somehow managed to end up in the water in Muscat.
Diver Jonathan Turner there with some noisy dune driving going on in the background. And adventure tourism is a growing trend in Oman. And before walking with Jonathan, we stayed just outside a remote desert camp deep in the Sharqiya sands that has a great focus on sustainability and responsible tourism. Thousand Night Camp was established by my good friend Abdullah Al-Harthi, and today it's run by his daughter, Wisal.
From the beginning, we have involved the local community in the planning and the operation of the camp by ensuring their values and their tradition are honored within our operation as well. So we said it's a success that lies between a mutual respect and collaboration. And growth as well. So they see if the camp there is a growth in the camp, there is a growth as well in their welfare and in their community as well.
Yeah.
We have to respect the culture. I always say we have to respect the culture, represent the culture of the Bedouin. And I'm sure you have gone and you met a lot of people when it's come to that term. So this is one part as well, sustainability practice. When it's come, we don't throw the waste in the desert, and I don't want to say we manage our the waste management what we are having. And then we, on a period, we try to do some desert cleaning with the locals as well. And beside that, we don't overuse the water. We hire people from them, people from our local community to deliver the water. So they understood how we run the Thousand Nights camp, and this is something that my father said from the beginning. And I did not want to change that. Things are getting bigger, but there are some fundamentals that I really believe in it, when it's come in terms of operating this camp, the Thousand Night Camp.
You know, just going back to those people that come from around the world, and I know Germany is an important market for tourism in Oman, UK, very important, Italy, Spain. I mean, people come from everywhere, really, don't they, increasingly? But obviously travel is changing, isn't it? And tourism is changing, and people still travel, but you start to see the term responsible travel starting to appear much more, and sustainable travel, and people are a bit more picky about where they go and their expectations in terms of what is the place that I'm staying doing to be environmentally good and sustainable. So you know, tell me, I mean, you live in one of the most hostile environments on the planet. You know, we're not far from the biggest sand desert on Earth, the Empty Quarter, which is a couple of hundred kilometres across the gravel plains. You know, what do you do at the camp, Wissal, that, you know, to play to that responsible, eco-friendly, sustainable direction that tourism is developing?
I think sustainability is the heart of the Thousand Nights Camp. As much as possible, we aim to minimize our footprint in this location. Beside that, if you notice, the infrastructure of the camp, it's all made from the natural and the material that come within the desert, whether we are using the shade of the tents or the wood type that we are trying to do a replica of it. So we get it from Africa, the acacia wood. And as well, the tent, if you notice, it's not built as a complex, it's scattered around the camp itself. So that gives a kind of freedom and movement, let's say, for the sand movement as well. If I showed you a photo 15 years ago and photo now, you will see we have much more tree. And beside that, the desert valley did not get changed, so we are in the same landscape, and I hope our team and myself doing our best to minimize that. Along with that, you know, we're trying, as I told you initially, we're trying to enhance our solar system and to enhance the use of the solar itself. Hopefully in the next 2 years we have a plan when it's come to that. As well, reducing our water intake. You know, at the end of the day, it's a desert. So never take something, and this is something that my father told me, never take something for granted. So this is one area as well where we are focusing to preserve the water. And we are trying to work with the local community when it comes to the desert cleaning, and periodically, so every month, we are doing some campaign. Our staff will participate, and as well the local will participate.
Sometimes it's hard to put the desert into words. One person who was very good at doing that was T.E. Lawrence of Arabia. And in his classic book, The Seven Pillars of Wisdom, he wrote at length about the subtly perfumed air. But the sense that I find speaks most when I'm out there is sound, not smell. I love the sound of the desert. If the sound of the first 3 or 4 days was Haboob, the wind, which was very strong, now the wind is very light. The wind that was our enemy is now our friend, because when it arrives, it's really gratefully received. It really cools you down nicely. But, you know, it really is now the sounds of the desert. And the overwhelming sound of the desert is silence, which I think is one reason why I love it so much, especially the first and the last hour of the day when the light is golden. And, you know, the sun is either rising in the east or setting in the west. It's just magical. But as we walk, Amr and I, all you hear is the sound of the camel prints, the constant gurgling of the stomach as they sort of ferment the food from the night before, the grinding of the teeth, the bellowing and the objections when you try to ride, get them to kneel down so you can very quickly jump on the back before they rise up again. Those are the sounds of sort of working with camels, but beyond that, it's pretty silent, really. If you're an ornithologist listening to this, the odd hoopoe lark, the odd wheatear. We had a swarm of bees. I mean, there aren't many places in the world where things are so silent. You hear a swarm of bees flying past about 100 metres away.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
So that's Amr, our Bedouin camel guide, singing the call to prayer. A week after we began our trip, we came across a mosque deep in the heart of the Sharqiya Sands, a fascinating and beautiful sight for the team. And for Amr and Ibrahim, they were able to pray, which is very important for them. But when you're out of hearing range of a mosque and unable to hear that call to prayer, it's up to you to do it yourself. And when Amr started to sing the call to prayer, a sound that resonates around the Middle East 5 times each day, I wanted to stand behind him and try and record that. It's one of the most beautiful sounds I know. And if I ever do make it onto Desert Island Discs, it will be one of my top 8 tracks.
Out of 7 species that are found globally, we have 5 in Oman. And one of them, the leatherback turtle, which is the largest species found in the world and in Oman, it doesn't actually nest on our beaches, it only visits our water for foraging. But we have 4 other species that nest along various areas of the coastline, and those are the green, as you mentioned, the loggerhead, the hawksbill, and the olive ridley. So they vary in distribution, and the only place in Oman where you can find all 4 nesting within the same location is Masirah Island, but obviously at different beaches and at different times of the year.
That's Rabab Al-Lawati, Outreach Officer at the Environmental Society of Oman, whose work focuses on the conservation of Oman's turtle populations. I wanted to find out about some of the conservation work they're doing and how they manage to strike a balance between conservation, the local community, fishermen, and a growing tourism industry.
So we actually conducted a 20-year study between 1985 and 2016. And what we observed is a 79% decline in the nesting activity on Masirah Island. And so this makes it such a massive decline. And it also makes this population of loggerhead turtles one of the highest conservation priorities for sea turtles in Oman. So it's an unfortunate truth, and the decline is still continuing on. So it's very important that we put the right conservation management practices in place to at least stop this decline and try to recover this subpopulation of loggerhead turtles.
Yeah. So what can you do as a society to try and arrest that decline and help them stabilise and recover?
So I think one of the most important things to start with is awareness raising. And that's one of the things that ESO has been working on, community engagement campaigns to target different members of the community, schools, and so on, to raise awareness about the threats that sea turtles face and to advocate for sustainable management practices. So it would really help if everybody is aware of these threats so that whatever the community can address can be addressed. For example, light pollution is a massive issue to marine turtles, and there are some very simple things that we can do that would mitigate this threat and actually lead to more turtles being able to make it out to sea. And so just raising awareness about the threats and then therefore what we can do for each threat, it would really help.
Yeah.
So for example, in the case of lighting pollution, we can actually retrofit existing lights for houses that face the beach to more wildlife certified lights that don't disorient the turtles as much. So the problem with lighting pollution is that usually both nesting females and hatchlings, they use the brightest points in the horizon to guide them towards the ocean, considering that they normally nest or hatch at night. And nowadays, with so many sources of artificial lighting, such as from houses, street lamps, and so on, the turtles often get disoriented and they head inland instead of towards the ocean, where they face additional threats such as dehydration, predation, getting run over by cars. And so that reduces the number of turtles that are able to go towards the ocean.
Obviously, you're doing a huge amount of diverse things and a lot of creative thinking going into engaging with the local communities. What role do you think tourism and ecotourism plays in the future and the present challenges for turtles?
So I think tourism has a promising role in a sustainable future for Oman's turtles. As responsible, eco-conscious tourism can raise awareness but also provide additional funding for marine turtle conservation. And people are always looking for fun activities that connect them with nature. And so I think it would be really good. But I would like to highlight and emphasize the importance of the words sustainable, responsible, and eco-conscious if we really want to find the right balance between marine turtle conservation and tourism or ecotourism. So, for example, referring back to the point on lighting pollution, if we are to look at tourism on Masirah Island or elsewhere in the country and we want to build hotels, resorts, all kinds of different additional infrastructure, it's very important for us to make sure that they're in the best interest of turtles. So we need to make sure that they're not built on turtle nesting beaches, that they follow the coastal setback guidelines, and that the lights that are on these buildings are actually wildlife certified.
We had an incredible day out on Masirah Island looking at some of the work that Rabab and her colleagues are doing there to protect the turtles. And from Masirah, we went by ferry back to the mainland to a place called Ras Al Haad, a wetland reserve which, for an enthusiastic birdwatcher like me, well, it's just a magical place. A salt marsh wetland home to over 80 species of shorebirds throughout the year. I woke up at our desert camp to the sound of ospreys, curlews, oyster catchers and flamingos. It's really such a special place. And that's where we're going to pick up in the next podcast, looking back at some of my highlights of the second phase of the Jewel of Arabia expedition. But for now, go and visit the Jewel of Arabia website, jewelofarabiaexpedition.com, to find out more about many of the ways Oman is protecting its biodiversity and pushing towards a more sustainable future. I'm Mark Evans. Bye for now.